Hey everyone, Kfemi here with another Reddit story. Today's is about a woman who had a generous heart and bought a huge house for her family, only to overhear a phone conversation that revealed their shocking secret. They were only there for her inheritance. It's a story of ultimate betrayal that proves sometimes the people closest to you are the ones you know least. Settle in, enjoy the Minecraft in the background, and let's get into it. The title is, I overheard my parents and sister reveal they only see me as a bank account, so I kicked them out and kept my inheritance. My parents' voices cut right through the phone. Living with her is miserable, but we're only here for the cash. My older sister snickered as if sharing a fantastic joke. I'm Diana, 33 years old, and one late evening instantly turned my entire existence upside down. I had just finished what seemed like an entirely typical phone call with my mother and father, when I realised they hadn't disconnected the line. Their voices, clear and utterly unfiltered, crackled through my receiver as they spoke to my sister, Meryl. My father's tone was cold and almost businesslike. It's a chore to live with her, but we are simply enduring it for her money. Before I could even register the words, my sister's sharp, cruel laughter, a sound of pure mockery, pierced the air, suggesting she had been privy to this secret all along. My hand clenched the phone so tightly my knuckles ached, and my heart hammered against my ribs, threatening to burst free. The room spun and my stomach knotted, but I didn't weep or shout. I just sat there, frozen, as every single syllable sliced deeper into me. They believed I'd hung up, oblivious when in fact I was receiving a live broadcast of their treachery. Each subsequent second stretched into eternity. My parents, the very people I trusted most in the universe, viewed me not as a loving daughter, but merely as a bank account. My sister's laughter echoed in my mind, each note a taunt, confirming how little significance I actually held for them. I remained on the sofa long after the call's official termination, staring at the phone's dark screen, replaying the scene over and over. Had things always been this way? Had every affectionate phrase been tainted with a hidden motive? I didn't have the answers. All I knew was that there was no way to unhear what I'd just heard. Those few sentences had drawn a line in the sand I could never step over again. They fundamentally altered everything. Before I go on, I'd like to hear from you. Have you ever discovered something about a family member that changed your perspective on them completely? Please share your experience in the comments. I'd like to know how you managed the immense weight of betrayal and what it ultimately taught you about trust. The following morning, I poured myself coffee as though nothing had changed. The kitchen was filled with the usual scent of toast and brewing espresso, but every movement felt like an unrehearsed performance. I placed plates on the breakfast bar, flipped waffles and wiped down countertops, my hands steady despite the storm raging inside my head. I had to remain composed. I needed to observe them without revealing my knowledge. My father, Howard, shuffled in and grabbed a mug without looking at me. His eyes quickly went to the financial page of the newspaper, deliberately avoiding mine, almost as if he sensed I had heard something forbidden. Morning, he mumbled, barely audible, before concealing his face behind the paper. I nodded, forced a small, tight smile, and watched him gulp his coffee too quickly, as if eager to escape to another location. My mother, Carol, followed, her voice artificially bright as she started talking. Did you see the new delivery truck the neighbour has? Isn't it something? She asked, laughing too loudly and nervously adjusting a napkin. I noticed it, I replied calmly, my stomach churning. She was overcompensating, trying far too hard to mask something. Then Meryl slouched in, glued to her phone, barely managing a grunt as a greeting. Her thumbs flew across the screen, no doubt scrolling social media or texting about her floundering jewellery design business. She didn't even glance at the breakfast I had made. I continued moving, stacking dishes, but my attention was sharp, cataloguing every detail. Dad's obvious fidgeting, Mum's strained enthusiasm, and Meryl's total indifference made them feel like strangers wearing familiar faces. I had always believed we were a tightly knit unit who shared everything. 4 years prior, I had purchased this large 4-bedroom residence in Denver, Colorado, specifically so we could all live together. After my grandfather passed away, I inherited a significant amount, enough to cover the mortgage, utilities, all household expenses, and even fund Mum's frequent luxury purchases. I assumed they had moved in with genuine appreciation. Dad took an early retirement, Mum did too, and Meryl, a few years older, had been reliant on me since her business failed. I had funded everything, asking no questions, believing this was what true families did. But suddenly, every memory felt polluted. Had they always viewed me simply as a source of funds? I recalled Dad inquiring casually, yet pointedly, about my investment portfolio last month. Or when Mum urged me to take them out for an expensive meal, her smile felt excessively broad. Meryl never once offered to contribute, always claiming she was in between contracts. I had dismissed it all, assuming they were just struggling. Now their actions appeared calculating. While rinsing a stock pot, I discreetly pulled out my phone and launched the notes application. I quickly jotted down, Dad avoiding eye contact, Mum too cheerful, Meryl doesn't care. I added earlier instances. Dad questioned investments. Mum suddenly interested in my work bonuses, Meryl's continuous phone usage. Each data point felt like a piece of a puzzle, forming a picture I hadn't wanted to acknowledge. I wasn't sure exactly what they were concealing, but I was determined to find out. Later that day, I caught Meryl quickly shutting my laptop, which I had left open on the kitchen island. When I walked in, she mumbled an excuse about checking the current temperature. My gut clenched. Something was definitely wrong. I stuck to my routine, drove to my cybersecurity job, and during meetings I wrote code, but my thoughts were elsewhere. I remembered gifting Mum the expensive cashmere wrap she'd wanted for her last birthday. She had embraced me and called me her pillar, but those words now felt empty. Dad had clapped me on the shoulder, expressing pride in my career growth. Was that pride or simple avarice? Meryl had barely offered a thank you for the cash I advanced for her business expenses. I had thought I was helping. Perhaps I was simply their provider. By the evening, I was sitting in my bedroom, phone in hand, reviewing my notes. I added another. Meryl checked my laptop today. I wasn't ready to confront them yet. I needed more than just suspicion. I would observe and delve deeper. They assumed I was oblivious, but I was fully alert now. This house, my house, was no longer a home. It was a crime scene, and I was done being their unsuspecting victim. By Wednesday, the things I'd previously ignored were painfully obvious. Dad's intense probing questions about my financial status felt chillingly different. At breakfast, he leaned across the table, coffee in hand, and asked, "How is that high-yield savings account doing, Diana?" His tone was intended to be casual, but his eyes darted away too quickly, as if trying to gauge my reaction. I merely shrugged, said everything was stable, and pivoted the conversation to a recent football game. He didn't press, but the air was heavy, as if he was waiting for me to make a mistake. I later saw him nervously flipping through channels on the living room TV, his fingers anxiously drumming. It wasn't an isolated incident. He had asked about my annual work bonuses last week and wanted details about my long-term savings the month before that. I'd always assumed he was just being a caring parent. Now it felt like he was keeping a running tally. Mum was no better at being discreet. She came home that afternoon with several large shopping bags containing designer handbags, a silk blouse, and footwear that cost more than my monthly insurance payment. "Just a little treat," she declared, smiling brightly as she unpacked them on the kitchen counter. I nodded, but my mind raced. These were not small purchases. I had witnessed her splurge before, new outfits, high-end kitchen gadgets, but this felt excessive even for her. She noticed my stare and giggled, dismissing my concern. "You work so hard, Diana, and we deserve to enjoy it, too." Her comment stung. It felt like she genuinely believed my money was their right to waste. I avoided confrontation, keeping my expression neutral, but internally, I was calculating everything. Meryl was the most egregious offender. She hadn't held a job in months and claimed her design business was paused. I found her sprawled on the couch, phone in hand, scrolling social media instead of looking for income. "Any news on your designs?" I asked, keeping my voice light. She barely looked up, muttering, "Not yet. I'm too busy." Busy with what? Posting selfies and liking other people's content. I vividly remembered when she had begged me for a loan to launch her brand, a loan I had given without the slightest hesitation. Her laziness was a blinding indicator I had dismissed for far too long. That evening, I started my investigation by retrieving a stack of financial documents from a desk drawer in my home office. Utility bills, credit card statements, and restaurant receipts. They were all in my name and paid from my account. I hadn't thought twice about it before. I simply wanted to ensure the family was comfortable. However, as I rapidly sifted through the papers, the numbers began to alarm me. A $600 dinner at a fancy steakhouse I had never stepped foot in, a $2,400 charge for specialised clothing I did not own, a subscription to a movie service I didn't use. My hands trembled as I spread the documents across my desk. Each receipt was a giant question mark. Who was responsible for this spending? Mum's expensive bags flashed through my mind. Dad's relentless inquiries. Meryl's perpetual scrolling. I documented the questionable charges on my phone next to the notes I'd begun on Monday. The list grew, and so did the tight knot of fear in my stomach. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling and struggling to process it. Had they always been this way? When I first accepted my software engineering position, I remembered family dinners, Mum's affectionate hugs, and Dad's proud smiles. Were those genuine or part of their performance? Meryl used to share her aspirations and failures with me. Now she felt like a complete stranger, as if I were only a resource to be exploited. I desperately wanted to believe that they loved me, not just my bank account, but the evidence was mounting. I didn't have definitive proof yet, not the kind I could present and demand answers for, but the warning signs were undeniable. Later that week, I witnessed Mum quickly tuck a credit card statement into her handbag. Her movements were swift, as if she was afraid I would notice. Just tidying up, she fibbed when I raised an eyebrow. I didn't buy anything. At dinner, Meryl complained about her phone being too slow, heavily implying she needed the newest model. Dad jumped in, saying I could easily help out since I was doing so well. I managed a nervous smile, said I'd consider it, then excused myself to my room. Alone, I got reopened my notes app and typed, "Mom hid a statement. Meryl wants a new phone. Dad's pushing again." I wasn't ready to confront them, not without something concrete. That Friday, I sat alone in my office, replaying their past requests, not the ones on the call. I had tried to suppress those from my memory, but the endless times they had prompted me to open my wallet. I stared at my computer screen, the code lines blurring as past recollections became clearer. Last summer, Mum insisted on a family trip to the California coast, claiming it would be wonderful for all of us. I had paid for the beachfront rental, all the groceries and even the fuel, while she beamed and called it quality time. Dad had strongly encouraged me to cover their RV repairs, claiming they were low on cash. I had handed over thousands, believing I was helping them. Meryl was the most shameless, constantly asking for just a little bit more to keep her design fantasies alive. I funded her website, fabric orders, and marketing campaigns. None of it ever yielded results. Each memory felt like a brick, constructing a wall between the family I imagined I had and the bleak reality. I couldn't stay in that office, surrounded by lines of logic that made more sense than my actual life. I grabbed my jacket and headed to a downtown cafe where I had planned to meet my friend, Lana. She was already there, sipping an iced latte, her laptop open to a new graphic design project. I slid into the chair, and before I could stop myself, the entire story erupted. The overheard call, my parents' betrayal, and Meryl's hateful laugh. Lana's eyes widened, then softened with sympathy. "Diana, that is horrific," she said, taking my hand. "You absolutely do not deserve that." Her voice was steady, grounded, and it anchored me. She didn't try to sugarcoat the situation. She simply listened, then leaned forward. "You're smart, don't let them manipulate you. Get the definitive proof. Protect yourself." I nodded, her words cutting through the fog of my confusion. She didn't try to make me feel better or pretend it wasn't serious. She simply provided me with clear direction. I left the cafe feeling lighter, able to breathe again. Driving back, I began dissecting old memories that had been hidden beneath the heavy weight of family loyalty. Growing up, Mum and Dad had always prioritised Meryl. They paid for her expensive art school tuition, even when we were financially strained. When I started college, they barely celebrated because they were too busy helping Meryl recover from a failed e-commerce venture. I had worked my way through school by coding late at night while Meryl partied, relying on their support. I believed I'd put that past behind me. Buying a house in Denver, Colorado meant we were now equals. But the more I remembered, the clearer the picture became. They had always seen her as the cherished project and me as the reliable safety net. There, Ainehamti, choices were motivated not by love, but by cold, hard convenience. As I pulled into the driveway, my resolve was hardened. I needed answers, not merely suspicions. Back in my home office, I opened my laptop and logged into my banking portal. I had glanced at bills before, but this time I would be meticulous. Every transaction, every transfer, every withdrawal. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I retrieved statements from the past 10 months. I didn't know what I would find, but I knew it wouldn't be just hazy receipts. If they were actively taking advantage of me, there would be an undeniable paper trail. Dad's inquiries about my assets, Mum's shopping sprees, and Meryl's perpetual excuses were not random events. I created a new note on my phone and titled it Proof. Over the weekend, I dissected my bank accounts. My home office was quiet, the only sound the soft whir of my laptop, as I opened the financial dashboard I'd been avoiding for too long. I had been paying for everything, the property, Mum's shopping, Meryl's dreams, but I had never truly tracked where the money went. Now I clicked through the transactions, my heart sinking with each reveal. There they were, dozens of outgoing transfers from my funds to an account I didn't recognise. Thousands of dollars, sent in increments, over a period of months. They were cryptically labelled business consultation fee, or miscellaneous. I double-checked the dates. Some correlated with times when Meryl had proposed new concepts for her design line. Others coincided with Mum's shopping trips. My parents had access to my secondary account to cover shared household expenses. But this was different. They had neither asked nor informed me. I scrolled further, my fingers shaking. A $5,000 transfer last month, followed by another $3,000 2 weeks ago. I looked up the account details and discovered the recipient, a limited liability company registered in Meryl's name. My sister's failing design venture, which she claimed was about to restart, was being funded with my inheritance. I leaned back as the full truth hit me like a physical blow. They weren't simply wasteful. They were systematically siphoning my inheritance to finance her fanciful ambitions. I felt sick, violated, and I needed to hear it from them. On Sunday morning, I found Mum in the kitchen slicing vegetables for lunch. I kept my voice calm and conversational. "Hey, Mum, I was looking through some bank statements. I noticed some rather large transfers. Do you know anything about them?" She paused, knife hovering over a carrot, then smiled too quickly. "Oh, darling, just some small gifts for Meryl. You know, to help her get back on her feet." Her gaze avoided mine, flicking instead to the countertop. "Gifts?" I asked, taking a step closer. "Thousands of dollars without asking me." She gave a tight, nervous laugh. "Diana, don't make a big deal out of it. We're family. We share, right?" Her words were light, but they sounded evasive, a practiced lie. I nodded, pretending to let it drop, but my mind was spinning. She was definitely hiding something, and I was no longer buying her act. I hadn't confronted Dad or Meryl yet. I had to secure my assets first. That afternoon, I drove to a local bank branch in Denver, Colorado. The teller, a friendly woman wearing large glasses, walked me through the process of opening a new high-security savings account that only I could access. I sat in her office, signing documents, as my phone buzzed with a text from Meryl. "Can we chat about my next collection?" I ignored it, focusing entirely on the paperwork. Back at home, I logged in again and transferred half of my grandfather's six-figure inheritance to the new account. It felt like physically reclaiming a piece of my own identity. I updated the passwords on my remaining accounts and revoked my parents' access to the secondary one. They would notice quickly, but I would be ready. On Sunday night, I sat at my desk, gazing at the new account balance. The transfers to Meryl's business weren't just careless. They were premeditated. A calculated betrayal orchestrated behind my back. Mum's deceit about the gifts confirmed it. I recalled every instance I had trusted them, handed over money, and believed we were a unified team. Now I saw the cold truth. They had exploited me, and Meryl was fully complicit. My resolve solidified. I wasn't just protecting my money. I was protecting myself. I opened my notes app and added one final entry. Mum lied about the transfers. They are actively stealing from me. I didn't know exactly how I would confront them. But I knew I would. Soon. Sunday dinner commenced as usual, until I decided to speak. The dining room was silent, save for the scent of roast turkey and the quiet clink of plates as Mom offered the sweet potatoes. Dad steadily cut his meat, his knife hand unwavering, while Meryl scrolled through her phone, barely touching her food. I sat across from them, my fork resting on my plate, my heart pounding loudly. I had been planning this moment all day, mentally rehearsing the words. Proof, transfers, lies. Hidden statements were stacked in my head like a deck of cards. I couldn't eat or continue the charade. I slowly placed my napkin down, took a deep breath, and began. I heard your phone call last week. You didn't hang up, and I know exactly what you really think of me. Silence slammed onto the table, like a lead weight. Dad's knife froze mid-slice. Mum's smile vanished, and Meryl's phone dropped into her lap. What are you talking about? Mum asked, her voice high and trembling. I fixed my gaze on hers. You said living with me is miserable, but you're staying for my money. Meryl laughed like it was a joke. Dad coughed and gently set his knife down. It was just idle chatter, sweetheart, he explained, his tone excessively soft, as if soothing a hysterical child. We didn't mean it. Mum quickly nodded. We were kidding, Diana. You know we love you. Their response sounded canned and utterly insincere, like lines from a terrible script. I turned to Meryl and waited. She stared at her plate before letting out a short, dismissive laugh. You're completely overreacting, she commented, rolling her eyes. That laugh, that sneer, was identical to the one on the phone, and it fueled my anger. I shoved my chair back, stood up and countered. Then explain the thousands of dollars you transferred to Meryl's business without my knowledge or consent. Mum's face went white and Dad's jaw clenched tight. That was for the family, Mum whispered. We genuinely thought you'd want to assist. I cut her off. Assist? You outright lied, Mum. You called it a gift when I asked. I trusted you, all of you, and you've been exploiting me. Meryl grumbled and crossed her arms. You're so controlling, Diana, always acting like you're superior to us. Her comment stung, but I wasn't finished. I pulled out my phone, opened a social media app, and displayed a screenshot. Controlling? Like this post? Meryl had publicly referred to me as a stingy control freak who hoards her wealth. I had found it that morning, a public post on her page, slamming me to all her followers. Mum gasped. Dad immediately turned away, and Meryl's smirk dissolved. I tossed the phone onto the table, the screenshot staring back at them. I have the transfers, the lies, the social media post. I'm done being your bank. Dad tried again, this time with a more forceful voice. Diana, calm yourself. We are family. We meant no real harm. But I was finished with being calm. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't mock you behind your back. I looked directly at each of them. Dad's look of guilt, Mum's visibly shaking hands, and Meryl's defiant indignation. I want you out of my house, all of you, by tomorrow morning. Mum's fork clattered onto her dish. You can't be serious, she whispered. Meryl gave a bitter laugh this time. Good luck living on your own, Diana. You'll miss us. I didn't flinch. I'll manage. Pack your things. They sat stunned as I walked away to my room. My heart was racing, but my steps were firm. I had given them everything. My home, my money, my trust. And they had thrown it back in my face. Meryl's public post was the final, undeniable proof that she never saw me as a sister, only as a resource. I locked the door, sat on my bed, and opened my notes app. I typed, "They're leaving, I'm free." The house was still mine, and I would make sure it stayed that way. They might try to negotiate their way back in, but I was done. Monday morning, the house felt deserted. The dining room table where I had confronted them remained bare. No plates, no voices. My father, mother, and Meryl had packed their belongings and left before daybreak, wheeling their suitcases out the door while I stayed in my bedroom, intentionally avoiding any final goodbyes. I walked through the living room, observing the empty spaces. Mum's favourite throw blanket was gone. Dad's reading glasses had vanished from the end table. Meryl's phone charger was no longer tangled on the sofa. I overheard Mum telling a friend on the phone, while loading the car, that they had moved into a small rental apartment across Denver. The silence in the house was deafening, but it was accompanied by a strange sense of profound relief, as if I'd finally dropped a debilitating weight I had carried for years. As I prepared coffee, my phone buzzed. Mom texted, Diana, we are truly sorry. We never intended to hurt you. Can we please talk? Dad texted, You are overreacting, sweetheart. Let's resolve this. Meryl's message was brief. You didn't have to kick us out, call me. Their words were a desperate tug on the part of me that still longed for a family, but I could see right through them now. The apologies were too immediate and too convenient, as if they were trying to reel me back in. I put the phone down, leaving their messages unread. I'd heard enough of their excuses at dinner, enough of their fake promises about joking and family sharing. I wasn't falling for it again. By lunchtime, I was sitting in a downtown lawyer's office, a small practice suggested by a colleague. The lawyer, a woman with sharp eyes and a legal pad, listened intently as I described the transfers, the lies, and the social media post. You need to secure your assets immediately, she advised, taking notes. We'll draft a cease and desist letter for any future unauthorized access and review your property rights. I nodded and signed the paperwork to begin the process. My house and my inheritance were mine, and I would ensure no one touched them again. The lawyer's cool efficiency grounded me, a constant reminder that I was taking control, not merely reacting. Back home, I stood in the kitchen staring at the spot where Mum had sliced vegetables and Meryl had browsed her phone. The freedom was real. I could breathe without their demands and silent judgment. But my heart ached for what had been irrevocably lost. I remembered Dad teaching me how to ride my first bicycle, and Mom making my elaborate birthday cakes. Even Meryl had braided my hair when we were children. Those memories felt distant now, entirely tainted by their ultimate betrayal. I didn't cry, but the sadness was a heavy presence, a silent memorial to the family I desperately wanted to believe we were. I opened my laptop, logged into my new bank account, and looked at the balance I had protected. It wasn't just about money, it was my entire future, and I was prepared to fight for it. 6 months later, I moved into a new apartment. The space was smaller than my previous house in Denver, but every corner felt clean, peaceful, and entirely devoid of secrets. I had successfully sold the property, kept the profits, and rebuilt my life on my own terms. My days were filled with coding projects, late-night debugging sessions, and quiet coffee runs that were completely free of family drama. I was living for myself, not for anyone else's expectations. Lana stopped by one evening bringing takeout and a playlist of old music we used to listen to in college. "This place suits you, Diana," she said, smiling as we unpacked the Thai noodles on my new couch. We laughed easily, discussing work and her current design client. There were no heavy confessions or advice needed. It was just simple, genuine friendship, the kind I had almost forgotten existed. I learned about my parents through a mutual acquaintance. They were scraping by in their small rental. No more extravagant dinners or designer handbags. Dad had taken a part-time job at a home improvement store, and Mum was selling her old jewellery online to help cover the rent. Their lifestyle had collapsed without my money to sustain it. I felt no vindication, only a sense of detachment, as if they were characters in a narrative I had entirely abandoned. Meryl suffered the worst consequences. Her social media post describing me as domineering and stingy had spectacularly backfired. Friends and followers turned against her, publicly calling out her sense of entitlement. Her already fragile design company utterly failed when her last investor pulled out. I noticed her profile go completely silent. There were no more pictures or selfies, just a ghost of the false image she had tried so hard to sell. Looking back, I learned to trust my initial instincts. That persistent feeling of unease I had suppressed for years had been correct all along. I had allowed love to blind me, believing that family meant unquestioning loyalty, regardless of the circumstances. However, loyalty does not mean ignoring lies or allowing people to completely drain you. Protecting my self-worth, my finances, my peace, and my personal boundaries was the most difficult but ultimately the most rewarding decision I ever made. That wraps up today's Reddit story. Thanks for hanging out with me while we went through Diana's brutal family betrayal and her final powerful stand. Kavemi here, signing off. Let me know in the comments what you thought about her decision to cut them off. Was it justified or too harsh? Stick around for more stories with the usual Minecraft vibes in the background. I'll see you in the next one.